Very good. So don't start that. Okay. So first of all, I want to tell you how incredibly honored I am to be asked to speak at this event. It is amazing to me, and let me tell you specifically why. Because as a 12-year-old, I started listening to the Voice of America on April 25th, 1974, as the communist tanks were coming up my avenue. And so to find myself in this situation where I'm leading the technology at the BBG for all of these organizations, and then being asked to speak at an event that celebrates the centennial of an icon is beyond belief to me. You know, the little 12-year-old kid from Portugal is just head over heels. So thank you so much. So now you can start timing me. Very good. Well, you know, at the BBG, the biggest challenge that we have faced, at least in the 7 years that I've been there, is the fact that over these 7 years, there's been an incredible transformation, not only in how the world deals with information, but also in our own way of dealing with information. I came to an agency that was still primarily living and dedicated and focused on cross-border radio, shortwave and medium wave. Television was sort of nascent, if you can believe that, in 2009, right? And social media was, you know, at that point practically non-existent. You know, websites were really, you know, as far as they had really gone. And 7 years later, I'm basically operating the widest distribution portfolio of any media company in the Western world, right? We operate everything from the largest shortwave stations in the world and medium wave stations in the world, literally hundreds of acres with antennas that are hundreds of feet tall and transmitters that just dwarf anything that we have in the United States, all the way to Twitter and everything in between. And so, you know, the ability for a government agency to, over a 7-year period, adapt itself to move away from its old paradigms and into new paradigms, while at the same time, to a large degree, being prevented from abandoning the old paradigms. Because when you're targeting 100 countries that are as diverse as, let's say, for example, Nigeria and China and the Ukraine, where there are, you know, vibrant media markets, and you're also targeting Cuba and North Korea, right? Your challenge is enormous. You can't just abandon platforms. So that for us, that is a tremendous, tremendous challenge. For a variety of reasons, right? You know, you operate within a government environment, so you have, you know, the budgetary constraints associated with the environment. Not so much, let me tell you, in terms of the amount of money available, right? But your ability to move that money where you need to move it as fast as you need to move it. I came on board in 2009. You're all familiar with continuing resolutions, right? And so we had a continuing resolution in 2010, in 2011, in 2012, and 2013. So the first time that I was operating with the budget that I had actually anything to do with was literally 5 years after I had come on board, okay? And so that gives you an idea. And at the same time, of course, you have to get permission from Congress to change your platforms, right? And there are people in Congress that are very, very adamant about our need to maintain shortwave and medium wave into a lot of markets, some where it's extremely relevant and some where it is not, right? But the truth is that every dollar that I spent over there, being far less than cost effective, is a dollar I cannot deploy here when I'm competing with RT and CCTV and Telesur and Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya and Al Sharqiya, and I could go on and on and on and on and on, right? And so that is a tremendous challenge from a platform standpoint. The second one is really from a censorship standpoint. The reality is that media is everywhere and censorship is everywhere. Some of the most sophisticated tools for online censorship have been brought online in the last 3-4 years. Right? So we operate in China, we try to operate in Tibet, we operate in Iran, we operate in Yemen, we operate in Saudi Arabia, we operate in Ethiopia, and all in Cuba. And all of these governments and regimes are absolutely intent on making sure that your information doesn't get there. Right? And so we have to deal with that. It just so happens that over the last 7 years, we have developed the largest internet anti-censorship operation from an operations standpoint. And as we speak, on an annual basis now, we facilitate over 1 trillion hits from behind some of the most repressive, firewalls in the world. Interestingly enough, we're still getting jammed on shortwave, right? You know, I'm operating shortwave into China, and every single of our frequencies is being jammed as we speak right now. Right before the election in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian government decided to jam not only our shortwave, but also satellites, okay? So it is a challenge that we must strive to overcome on a constant basis, but it's becoming more and more pervasive, and it's being targeted in its pervasiveness, right? For example, just recently, so it was something I said, Frank. So just recently, you know, specific websites were blocked in the Ukraine. Specific websites were blocked in Russia. Specific websites were even blocked in Mali, if you can imagine, right? And so this is a problem and a challenge that is absolutely pervasive. And finally, let me talk about echo chambers, because I think that that is a challenge for all of us, not only in public diplomacy, but all of us, you know, in humanity. So what we've seen, you know, developing and with increasing virulence is this concept that people gravitate to what they already believe, right? And then the tools aid that in a tremendous fashion, right? Because it takes a conscious effort to go into, let's say, MSNBC or Fox or CNN, right? Where you want to have those thoughts basically, you know, strengthened, because I'm right because these people are telling me that I'm right. But the most pervasive, you know, and possibly most pernicious one is the fact that as we go online and we use search engines, those search engines, with every single search you perform, create your own microenvironment. They start showing you ads, they start showing you articles, they start showing you preferences, they start lining up your search results by what they know your interests are. Because their objective is absolutely not to spread information or the truth, but to gather clicks. And so they figure if they show you 10 things that you're interested in because you demonstrated you were interested in them before, they're going to go to those 10 clicks, and that's going to translate into money, right? And so we have this total and complete conspiracy of the media world, where websites that are supposed to be the portrayers of truth, the purveyors of information, are instead feeding you a constant stream of things that you're going to click on to make them money, right? And of course, then you get into the disinformation part, which is the fact that, as somebody mentioned prior, I believe, you have all of these people who are sitting in their pajamas in their basement and who know that if they create a story that is outrageous enough and present it in the platform of choice of the person that is going to be outraged, they will generate clicks and therefore generate income, right? And so here we have a media world in which we are competing not only across the entire spectrum of media, but also with every single individual out there that has now discovered that by purveying information, regardless of source, originality, or truthfulness, is going to benefit from you clicking on it. This is an incredibly dangerous situation in which we find ourselves, but to a large degree, it's also generated by our own willingness to be a willing participant in this particular schema. And so I think that those challenges in terms of now coming to the table with something that contravenes that is tremendous. So the last minute, and I believe it's like 65 seconds, I am going to talk a little bit about the BBG story. So 65 seconds, here's the deal. 7 years ago, we had 165 million people. They were mostly listening to us on the radio, a little bit on TV, and almost nothing on digital media. 7 years later, we just released our latest numbers, 278 million weekly audience. Okay, so we've gone up by 68%, with 174 million on TV, 130 on radio, and 45 million on digital media. Okay, during a time frame where our purchasing power from a budgetary standpoint has gone down by $150 million. That is the best story in media anywhere in the world. And I'm incredibly proud to be part of that particular story. So there you go.